Hi, I'm Maya Berry. Welcome to Viewpoint. Jim is away this week. On tonight's program, we're going to get analysis of the situation in Syria and yesterday's Arab League action from Murhaf Jouaijati of the National Defense University. Then we'll look at Tuesday's raid on the Occupy Wall Street camp and what's next for the movement with Ziad Gilani of the thinkprogress.org. But first, it's been 8 years since the signing of the Geneva Accord, a landmark Israeli-Palestinian agreement that proposed solutions to contentious issues such as Jerusalem, borders, and refugees. Tonight, we'll talk with two key negotiators of that accord, former Knesset Member Yossi Beilin, later in the program, and my first guest, Samih Al-Abed, who has been deeply involved in Middle East peace negotiations for many years. In addition to Geneva, he participated in peace talks at Camp David, Taba, and Annapolis. He's a former minister in the Palestinian Authority and currently heads the nonprofit Palestinian Housing Council. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you to be with you.
And I had the pleasure of learning before we started, an architect and interest in design, so I said we could do a separate interview on those topics. I want to start by asking you about Taba, because Taba is one of those agreements where people really truly believe we were about as close as we were going to get in terms of getting a deal. How did you feel being there? What did you think would come out of those talks? And at the end of the day, why do you think it didn't work?
Well, Taba was a continuation of the process which started in Camp David before. Unfortunately, Camp David failed because there were no interest from the Israeli side to go ahead with serious talks about the final status negotiation. And also, it was not prepared well by the Americans, even though they both tried to deny that fact and tried most of the time to blame the Palestinians for the failure of Camp David. Unfortunately, this is not truth, and some of those who participated in the Camp David agreement, they came out outspoken to tell the truth to the people. We thought Taba, it came after the parameter from President Clinton. And we thought that this will lead us toward solving some of the problems that we were facing before and not identifying exactly what are the things that is not acceptable from both sides. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, during that time in Taba was very limited time for the Prime Minister of Israel, Yehuda Barak. He asked to continue for the election, and the election came out, and we could not really manage to come to an agreement because of that. Even though we were close, at least from the point of view of the politician, that we were close more than we were in Camp David. But unfortunately, because of the election in Israel and the failure of Barak to become the Prime Minister again, then Sharon took over, and it did not really succeed.
Contrasting that with the Geneva Accords and what you were able to, actually sign an agreement. You had Palestinians and Israelis come to a place of having a signed agreement there. The mishap there, if you could give us sort of just a quick summary of what you...
It was a continuation of that process. We took what happened in Camp David, Clinton parameter, and in Taba, and it was a continuation of that process as well. The same people who were in Camp David, mainly, the same people who were negotiating with each other, which they failed in the beginning of the process to agree on the issues. We spent at least 2 years for that, and we went into details for all the issues. As they usually said, the devil in the details, mm-hmm. But we went into the details. We had the framework, and we went into the details in order to try to find a model to tell the people that it can be done. The whole aspect of Geneva Accord was telling the people that an agreement can be done. This is a model. We would like to see the politician, the leadership, to look at it and to see where we can meet, where we can disagree, and mm-hmm. something like this, but to continue the process. So the same people, they manage to get together and to have some agreement, probably not really according to what each party wanted to have, but at least we felt that this is something that we can live with. then the both people can be live together side by side, and it was the signal for the two-state solution.
The framework, basically, that laid out that. At that time, when you say the devil's in the details, the agreement was specific about even the number of settlers that would have to be removed. At that time, you were looking at numbers of nearly 170,000, 2003. Looking at that today, given what you know and the experience personally you've had in trying to get to a place where negotiations produce a change for Palestinians, what do you think is possible today?
It is still possible, but as you know, the Israeli government was trying to race against the clock in order to put more facts on the ground. And this is why the Palestinian side are demanding that this freeze of settlement building is the starting point for the negotiation. At least this will tell us that they have no intention whatsoever in order to finalize an agreement built on reality. Adding more, taking more space, adding more settlements, it will create a problem for them and for us. And what wanted from our side, that an interference from the United States, from the quartet, to put an end to that in order for us to start the real negotiation. And I think President Abbas, he mentioned that all the time, that negotiation, but we have to agree on the framework and to freeze the settlement according to the quartet statement. And if they will continue to do that, it will be a problem for them as well, because we will not accept any facts on the ground that is beyond what we already have in mind for the state of Palestine to be in the border of 1967 with a limited swab that people can live with. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us and for them as well.
I want to ask you what you must have heard when President Obama was giving his speech to AIPAC's policy conference, when he referenced the 1967 borders, which are, of course, part of the Geneva Accords, something that is fairly accepted, land for peace, 1-to-1 ratio. When you heard the controversy that ensued after he made a reference to 67 borders, what was your sense of sort of the American political dynamic on the issue of settlements?
Well, it was, for us, it's unfair, and we feel that injustice was made for us on this issue. It has been the same way with the interference of the United States as a broker from day one. They were not fair, and we feel that there is no justice in their stand for this way of solving the problem. We feel that the statement that was made by President Obama first, in May 19th, I think he made the statement for the border of 1967, and with swap land, which is acceptable, and the two capitals for the Palestinians. That was accepted by our politicians, by our leadership, that they will go ahead with that. But in order to go for this, there is a prerequisite for this, and it's not a condition. A prerequisite as it was signed in the quartet statement, that they have to freeze the settlement instead of putting more facts on the ground and make it difficult for both of us, and they have to agree on the framework which was set by President Obama. This is our stand, and we will continue dealing with this issue.
It was just remarkable at the time, because it's literally what the foundation of negotiations has been for nearly 2 decades, and we treated it as if it had been this landmark statement of some sort. I'm delighted to say that our next guest, Dr. Yossi Beilin, is actually here and able to join us. He served as a member of the Knesset for 11 years and in several ministerial posts in the labor government of Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, and Ehud Barak. He was involved in the 1993 Oslo Accords, the 2001 Taba talks, and was a signatory and primary architect of the 2003 Geneva Accord. Dr. Beilin, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm delighted because you planned to be with us for, I think, the end segment where we wouldn't be able to have you together. So I'm glad that we can reconvene you this way.
We always prefer to be together.
That is wonderful. I've been talking with Dr. Al-Abed about the nature of the work that the two of you have been doing for such a long time, and how dramatically different it is, frankly, today. that as you spoke earlier today here in Washington, specifically on the negotiation process and where it was perhaps in 2003, what we could be looking for now. We talked a bit about settlements, but as you look at the current situation, what are you hopeful about in terms of being able to move something forward?
Well, I think that the main question for us, the people who really believe in the permanent solution and who actually succeeded to convince the world in a way that this is the only solution around, is whether we are waiting for better days or whether we can suggest something which is less than what we really want. This is the dilemma that we are having. And I believe that we are all torn about it. I mean, I am seen in Israel as the person of the permanent solution. And Samih is the same. I mean, he believes in a permanent solution, and we believe that it is doable, and that when it happens, people will understand that it is much easier than what they had thought. But in the current situation, I think that there is no chance for any permanent solution, as there was no chance when we signed the Geneva Initiative with Sharon and Arafat. There was no chance then, when we knew it. So I believe that we cannot wait. We cannot afford to wait. We cannot afford to wait for the second term of Obama. We cannot afford for a change in the Israeli governments or other governments. We cannot do that. And here the question is whether we can be satisfied for a while with something which is interim. Or should we say, the danger of an interim solution is that it becomes a permanent one. This is the biggest danger, that it is preferable not to do anything and to wait. And this is the dilemma. I mean, I today believe that it might be better to do something like the second phase of the roadmap rather than to wait for better days.
You say you signed the agreement. You knew on some level that this was not. Would you say the same thing as you in Geneva and back in 2003?
Well, the only thing that we differ about this interim agreement, we've been in the interim period for almost now close to, what, 20 years or so?
18 years.
18 years. 18 years. It didn't work. It didn't work, unfortunately. What we need these days is just to put the framework. The framework we're asking about, that this is the state of Palestine and this is the state of Israel. And we can talk about the details in how the evacuation will take place, how things it will take time. We know that will take time, but at least people will know that that is their destination. This is the state of Palestine. This is what we are after now. We think by this, then we can start to talk about the other issues, and we will have enough time. When you talk between two states, in a peaceful solution is much easier than to talk when you still have conflict, building settlements, taking more land, settlers, their action toward the Palestinians there. It's create a lot of tense within the population there that they cannot see there is a future. What we really wanted to tell the people that this is your destination, this is your state, and we will work together in order to achieve this.
But Samir, you don't have an Israeli partner for this idea. I mean, I'm all for it. And you don't have an American partner. You know, the Americans are waiting for the next elections in the best case.
That's what I want to ask about, actually, is the two of you, as Palestinians and Israelis, are not the only party to this process and have not been. And the role that the U.S. plays has been, from my particular perspective and others, has not been helpful, to say the least. What factors do you need? What do you need to change in terms of the way the U.S. approaches this? Given that we are looking at an election year, given that we're in that interim period of let's wait to see what happens until next.
Well, I'll tell you my view about it. I think that President Obama believes that it is possible to freeze the situation more or less, to manage the conflict for a year, and then when he is re-elected, if he is re-elected, and I hope personally that he will be re-elected, despite of my frustration, because I don't have here anybody better than him, he believes that then he might refer again to the issue and maybe try to change the situation. And what I'm saying is that you can never know. A year is a very long time sometimes, and anything may happen. In order to prevent being totally in the hands of the circumstances, one has to take decisions. And this is what is lacking here. An initiative, an American initiative, to push things now. And this is why I believe that something like an interim solution of this kind of or another might be easier for him politically. Because to do nothing, in my view, is a huge danger for him even politically. To go for the whole thing, he knows that Netanyahu is not ready to pay the price. So it means a collision course with Netanyahu, which he cannot afford right now from his point of view. As a result of it, something which is less than the Geneva Initiative, something which is an interim, this way or another, might be realistic for him too. And I'm asking for the realistic solution. To do nothing, in my view, is the biggest mistake of all.
We'd like to get you in on the conversation. If you're calling from overseas, the number is 001-202-420-5665. Here in the U.S., the number is 1-202-420-5730. I want to ask you, because you just made the case for why the Palestinians took the initiatives, perhaps, that they did with the United Nations, feeling very strongly that the process has not arrived at anything that has resulted in either change on the ground or even a process that has continued to develop into something meaningful. Tell me, both of you, your perspective on what happened with the UN, what is continuing to unfold, and what the expectations are in terms of the political fallout from that decision.
Well, with the frustration that is taking place within the Palestinian society there, we have to go back to the United Nations. We have to go back to the international community and to put our case in front of them. Now, by doing this, what we really wanted to do, to be part of the international community. We wanted to obey by the rules and laws and regulation for the United Nations, for the international community. We don't understand why people are against us to be part of that system, why they will vote against us in being part of having our contribute to the international community. We can contribute as Palestinians to that and to the region. Why people are against us? Why people are against us by going to the UNESCO, which is only a scientific, cultural, heritage, archaeological sites that we want to preserve, we want to keep for our generation to come. Well, this is a crime that the Palestinians are taking. Those are very symbolic steps that we are trying to get into the international community, trying to get into the arena of the United Nations by being members of that community. This is what we really don't understand from the point of view, whether from the Israelis or from the Americans. Our people are asking for their freedom, their dignity, and their opportunity for the future. And we need the international community to answer us why they are against us having our freedom and dignity and opportunity for the future.
Your take on that?
Well, I think that on the one hand, going to the UN is not the solution, but as Samir said, it is a result of the frustration, understanding that Netanyahu is not going to pay the price for peace, understanding that Obama is not enthusiastic to be involved, understanding that violence will not solve anything. So the option was to try the international arena, and it was quite successful. I mean, the success was to attract the interest of the whole world again to the Palestinian problem, while usually they would have looked at the Arab Spring or other things. And the fact that this was the fight about 2 months ago here was from a Palestinian point of view wise. And I think that Israel could have easily been the first to recognize the Palestinian state, especially a rightist government. Why a rightist government? I can tell you between us, for me it is not such a big deal. I mean, a Palestinian state theoretically on the 67 borders, but practically on 40% of the West Bank is not such a big deal. And the fear of the Palestinians, why didn't they do it before? They could have done it 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. They didn't do it because they did not want the world to be satisfied that there was a victory in the UN, there is a Palestinian state, but on the ground, they are actually under occupation. This is why they didn't do it before. And I was not enthusiastic about it. For the right could have said, okay, if you are ready to have your recognized state on actually 40% of the land, be my guest, I recognize you, you are the prime minister, you are the president, you can be an ambassador, whatever. It is a cheap solution. Why didn't the right support it? I really don't understand. I may say that it was a kind of a small victory, because the Palestinians could prove to the world that there is a majority with them. Now, the question is, what are we going to do on the ground?
Right.
And how can they save paying a price like giving up on American assistance and whatever, which might be a real price for them? So the victory is a little bit theoretical, and the price is very tangible.
Let's take our first caller from the UK. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, yes. My name is Ali. I have a question to your guests about Israeli-Palestinian dispute and its negative economic impact on the economy of the Middle East region, and what is the solution to progress the economy, which caused the collapse of regime of Egypt and regime of Tunisia and the regime of Libya due to not processing the peace process, not achieving any peace on the Palestinian-Israeli side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. It certainly makes an interesting point, which is the level to which the Arab Spring was rooted in economic upheaval. And the lack of resolve in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has, in addition to being this really important existential issue for Arabs, there is this bottom line economic stability piece.
It's not only the economic stability. As long as the Palestinians, they did not get their just and fair solution for their problem, it always will be the problem in the region. Mm-hmm. It is essential for the Palestinians to have the cause of the Palestinians to be just and to be fair and to accomplish something by having their own state. If they don't have that, the stability in the whole region will not be as people think it might be. The new uprising that is taking place within the Arab community there, it is the youth, they're all asking for having a better freedom, a better dignity, and a better way for future. It's the same thing that we are asking. So we are in the same line. And unless we have the justice for our cause, it will create problems in the region, and economically, as well as socially, as well as other elements that we don't know what will happen later. Everybody knows that it is a crucial element in the region, that the Palestinian-Israeli issue must be solved with justice and fairness. Otherwise, things will keep, God knows what will happen. I mean, this must take place. Mm-hmm. Sooner or later, we have to have a just for our cause.
Let's take another caller from Ghana. Good evening, caller.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mark Anthony from Ghana. Mark Anthony Mansour from Ghana.
Welcome. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question regarding the economic. Yes, the economic situation in Israel. Is it possible that it could flare up to be an Israeli spring? That's number one. Number two, seeing the two guests that you have sitting next to each other gives me a lot of hope that, they can also solve their problems without Obama and without Netanyahu. I think if the willingness is there, they can easily, solve the problems, without having to rely on the election of Obama again or the re-election of Netanyahu, and just iron the differences.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. Economic situation in Israel.
Well, first, about making peace between us. Yes, we can make peace between us, but it is not enough. We may not need so much the American president, although it might be very important to have him in the game, but we cannot do it without the leadership of both peoples. So without Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, and without Netanyahu, or their successors, it will be impossible. And this is why there is a kind of a triangular, the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Americans in the peacemaking process. It is not that all of them have to be synchronized and agreed to the same target. It is enough that one of them will fight like hell for peace. The current situation, because of many reasons, is that one of them is not ready to pay the price. The others are ready to pay the price or agree with the price which should be paid, but are not fighting for achieving it because of their own political reasons and personal reasons. And this is why I believe that we cannot make it. For sure, the peoples are ready. The majorities are there. We see it in all the public opinion polls. It is a matter of leadership, and without this leadership on the Palestinian side, on the Israeli side, and I do not compare. I mean, it is different. It is a different situation. But without this leadership, you cannot do it. Now about the economy. I would say so. In Israel, you are not going to have the Israeli Spring, even though we had very nice demonstrations, because first of all, it is a democracy, and the easiest thing is to change the government in the ballot box. You don't have to have a revolution for this, and this is why this Israeli Spring was very quiet. Another reason is that, generally speaking, Israel is still very stable economically. It might change in a day, God forbid, but it is stable, and it is a very today it is flourishing. The unemployment is the lowest in the last 30 years. And so there is a general good feeling in Israel, which might be a deception, might be temporary, but this is the current situation. What is interesting is about the the turnover between the two sides, between Israel and Palestine. People don't know that Palestine for Israel is the second economic target after the United States. If you don't compare it to Europe as Europe, but to Europe as different states, we are speaking about $4.5 billion a year. So for Israel, it is a big part of our economy. For the Palestinians, it is even much bigger. And I'm just thinking, if we have peace, we can really multiply it. We can do so many things economically together if we can really easily go from one side to another. Today, even though it is very cumbersome and difficult, still you have economic cooperation in favor of both sides.
I think that was the point of the caller in referencing the Arab Spring and how much better it would be if we could get to some resolve on that. Let's take one more call before we have to go to break. Nebraska, good evening, caller.
Yes. Hello. My name is Isam Ismail. I'm calling from Nebraska. Hello, Doctor.
Hello.
Hello, Mr.
كلنا دكاتير.
كيف حالك دكتور؟
الحمد لله.
أهلين. أنا أبو أمين اللي بحكي.
أهلا وسهلا.
أهلين. When the 1993 peace process started, we were under the impression that it's going to be a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders. And that's when we signed the Oslo Accord, and everybody was happy that we're going to have two-state solution. The Israelis, some way, somehow, they always have excuses not to implement. And Mr. Yossi Beilin, you were among the encouraging people to have the two-state solution. You were an adult, and you were peace activist. I remember you, and I followed you. But I believe if the two-state solution is not implemented right away, and Israel should be the first one to recognize that the Palestinian state on 1967 borders, we're going to go to a lot of difficulties, and probably the only thing will be available is one-state solution, where Jews, Christians, and Muslims live in one country in the entire Palestine, from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to Jordan River. And this is what
Thank you. I'm sorry, caller. I've got to interrupt only, and then we're almost out of time in this segment, and I want to give them an opportunity each to respond quickly to your comment. Thank you so much for calling.
First of all, we, as President Abbas said, we wanted a one-state solution. We want the Palestinian state. and we wanted that to happen within the negotiation, a serious negotiation that will take place. But unfortunately, this is not happening. And just I want to one point about the economy. You know, while the economy of Israel is flourishing, the economy in the United States is down too much, and our economy is not that good as well. So this is the thing. If you are flourishing in Israel economically and satisfied with the way you are and doing the things that you wanted to do and putting more obstacles in front of achieving peace, while the Americans are trying to solve their economic problem there, at the same time, the American Congress want to cut aid on the Palestinians as well, because something that going to the United Nations to be part of the UN arena, it became a punishment for the Palestinians to do so. It's unacceptable, and it's I don't know what to say about it. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Right. Let me, because we're almost out of time, his point there about this conversation and the importance of a two-state solution. Have we entered a phase? When is that point where it becomes basically a theoretical conversation? Because it's the facts on the ground are such that it's almost no longer conceivable.
Never. There won't be a point of no return with the two-state solutions, because I believe that if there are more Palestinians than Israelis in the area between the sea and the River Jordan, the Prime Minister of Israel, if he is not ready to pay the price for peace and to divide Jerusalem and all these things, will withdraw unilaterally to something like the wall or the fence which has been built already. So I don't think that there is any Israeli Prime Minister, even from the extreme right, who will be ready to a situation whereby we are a minority, the Palestinians we are a minority, they are a majority, and we are ruling them, because nobody will accept it in the world, and in Israel the majority will be against it too.
I'm so grateful for the time that we had, particularly because it was the two of you together. Thank you very much for joining us. We could have certainly talked longer. We'll be back our next segment to look at the situation in Syria with Mirhav Shuaijati of the National Defense University and take more of your calls. Stay tuned.